Hi, hey, it's Diane Burroughs from BirdSupplies.com, and today I want to tell you why I care so much about feather plucking. But let me give you a little background. I started out as Chirp and Squawk Bird Supplies in like 1998, and I had acquired a couple of larger parrots, and I was just having trouble finding the supplies that I wanted. And as a behaviorist, you know, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, I began researching feather plucking like really early on. I developed a feather plucking questionnaire for veterinarians and sold just those plastic style of bird collars. They're called safety shields on the website, and offered free consultations for people who were dealing with feather plucking. And it became such a big thing that in 2011, I just solely changed everything over to dealing specifically with feather plucking behaviors. And I'm glad I did that, because I kept doing more and more research and developing products to support feather pluckers. But in 2012, my own parrot, Peachy, a Moluccan Cockatoo, developed a illness called megabacteria. It's actually a fungal disorder that is pretty critical. I almost lost him 3 times over it. And I remember one time, early on, I took him to my avian veterinarian, and she took x-rays of his chest and felt like he was just full of tumors, and so she encouraged me to go see an avian veterinarian up in Denver. I was living in Colorado Springs at the time. So I came up to Denver, and I'm glad I did, because I developed a closer working relationship with this veterinarian clinic that was affiliated with Colorado State University, a veterinary school. And so anyway, long story short, Peachy recovered from the megabacteria, but when his lungs were so inflamed due to the bacteria, he started plucking his own feathers. So I was myself dealing with feather plucking for the first time ever. And I remember how devastated I was, basically because I knew how serious Moluccans and umbrellas can get with self-mutilation and plucking. And so I was just paranoid that it was going to turn into a habitual habit that would be a lifetime problem. And so I really wanted to nip the feather plucking in the bud, so to speak, really early on. And so what I did is I worked with my avian veterinarian, and we talked about the strategies that she knew about that worked. And the first thing that came up was the importance of interrupting the plucking cycle with a bird collar. And some of the ones that were offered to me, of course, were the ones that I had on my website, which were those heavy plastic ones they just impede the daily activities of life for a parrot. And Peachy was so weak at that time that I didn't really want to put anything on him that would cause more stress. And so I began developing a larger line of these bird collars. And the bird collar worked for him. It interrupted his plucking cycle, and I did some other things. Even though he was living in a hospital cage, I did everything I could to maintain his nutritional status. He had originally lost a whole lot of weight, so we were working on gaining that weight back. I was working on bathing him and grooming him and ensuring that he got plenty of sleep and rest, and as much as possible offering him enriching activities so that he was just not bored out of his, feathers in that cage. And lo and behold, everything I did worked for him, and I was really pleased with that. So a lot of the wellness stuff that I talk about in my videos is what worked for Peachy. And then several years later, my little Timna African Grey, Timmy, I know, original name, he started feather plucking, and he was pulling specifically his tail feathers. A lot of African Greys will progress into their chest and then under their wings, but Timmy has just been a tail plucker for, probably about 4 years. And I caught that early as well. I noticed the tail feathers on the bottom of his cage, and so I immediately did some behavior modification strategies. The first thing I did was like a time study to try and figure out what was triggering the behavior in the first place. And once I figured out what was triggering the behavior, my whole world changed, because I was able then to remove that trigger, or rearrange the antecedent is the actual term in behavior modification. And once I removed the trigger and made sure that he was enriched and he felt safe, and that what was scaring him was no longer a possibility, the plucking really diminished. I can't say that it's ever gone away 100%. His trigger is that he's scared when he gets very scared that he's going to get hurt, he pulls his tail feathers out. He's a little bit of an anxious bird anyway. He's a rescue. And so when something happens that scares him, he does pluck his feathers. But overwhelmingly, it's not turned into a ongoing habit. It's not a daily thing that I have to manage. It's simply if something scares him, I have to really work at helping him to calm back down. And so for me, with my 2 birds, you know, the strategies that I propose to you are actually real life strategies that I have used. Introducing wellness, health and wellness, using a bird collar, figuring out what the antecedent is, positive reinforcement for behaviors that I want to see more of. Those are huge strategies that have worked well, especially when you catch your bird early on. So anyway, I wanted to let you know why I care so much about feather plucking, how it came to be, and I hope that helps you out, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, bye.